It's WNYC. Coming up next is Marketplace on the show tonight. At 4%, the national unemployment rate is low. But can we go lower?
When unemployment is low, that's great for workers and the economy. But it actually can get too low.
The factors behind unemployment. That's coming up next on Marketplace. We'll be back with all things considered at 7. It's 25 degrees right now. We'll see temperatures settling in the high teens overnight tomorrow. Still pretty chilly, high around 32 degrees. It's 6:30.
WNYC is supported by the Metropolitan Opera. The Met season continues this spring with a lineup of company premieres, new productions, and classic revivals. The Metropolitan Opera. All the stories on one stage. Learn more at metopera.org.
WNYC. Independent journalism in the public interest. 93.9 FM and AM 820. NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Marketplace is supported by VantageScore, a leading credit score now mandated for use in the conventional conforming space. Loans purchased by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. VantageScore, good for credit, credit for good.
On the program today, we can't not do tariffs. Sorry, we don't make the rules. We'll do streaming video and the unemployment rate as well. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Solidigm. Today's AI ambitions require a different approach to storage. Solidigm offers solid-state storage solutions optimized for AI with higher capacities, greater speed, and energy efficiency. StorageForAI.com. And by Clear Channel Outdoor, an out-of-home advertising company with a nationwide network of billboards, offering data-driven solutions that help businesses big and small reach their consumers with accuracy, impact, and scale. Billboardsforbusiness.com.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kai Ryssdal. It is Tuesday today, the 18th day of February. Good as always to have you with us, everybody. We begin today with this observation, that we are now in week 5 of the second Trump administration, which is to say it is very early days as of yet. But all the same, some familiar economic themes are solidifying. First among them, the ever-present threat of more Trump tariffs. We start there because this is one of those weeks where various and sundry Federal Reserve officials get chatty, with remarks scheduled from regional Fed presidents and from members of the Board of Governors in Washington. And the question they are trying to answer as they steer this economy through the chaos is this: do tariffs lead to one-time price increases and so maybe aren't that big a deal? Or do they jumpstart inflation, broader price increases over time, which, as we all know, is a much bigger deal? Marketplace's Kristen Schwab sorts out the Fed strategy.
To predict how tariffs might affect inflation, economist Stephanie Kelton at Stony Brook University says we need to know exactly what the tariffs will be.
It's so tough because we're trying to have a conversation about something where there's just, nobody knows.
We don't know if all the proposed tariffs will go through or if they'll lead to a trade war and more taxes. So Ken Kuttner, a former Fed staffer, says at first,
the Fed is going to try to look past that transitory inflation spike that'll be created by the tariffs.
Unless consumers think that price spike is just the beginning.
People start thinking, price of tomatoes went up, everything else is going to start going up. And so we're returning to an inflationary environment.
Returning is a key word here. Years of inflation have primed us to think higher tomato prices mean higher prices for cars and clothes. And with tariffs, that might appear to be true since they cover many categories of goods and their prices will rise kind of all at once. Randy Kroszner, a former governor of the Federal Reserve Board, says a sign workers believe this is inflation is if they ask for raises.
Typically, the Fed will respond to something that it sees as an ongoing process. If wage increases continue to be very high and that adds to a cost of production, and that will lead to higher prices down the line.
It's why, regardless of where the tariffs land, the Fed's messaging will be important. Here's Stephanie Kelton again.
If the inflation rate starts to move up for whatever reason, the Fed is going to feel compelled to respond in some way.
With a longer than anticipated pause or even a raise to signal to consumers that it is serious about getting inflation down to 2%. I'm Kristen Schwab for Marketplace.
Wall Street, after a 3-day weekend, traders were well rested and still, apparently, unconcerned. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. I'm going to throw some data points at you en route to this next story. Nice and slow, of course, because they are important. Unemployment in these United States was 3.5% in February of 2020. That is, heading into the pandemic. In the post-plague recovery, it got down to 3.4%. That was April 2023, a more than 50-year low. And it now sits, unemployment does, at 4%, still historically very low. But could it go even lower? 2%, 1.5%? And wouldn't that be great? Maybe, but also maybe not. Marketplace's Mitchell Hartman takes it from there.
So this question, how low can unemployment in the U.S. go, was prompted by a story I did recently. I was explaining why unemployment couldn't keep falling as rapidly in the post-pandemic period as it had before the pandemic, because that would have meant unemployment falling to 1.5%, which I said economists will tell you pretty much can't happen. And then I heard from fellow Marketplace reporter Stephanie Hughes.
I know that below 4% is really good, but why can't we get to 1.5%?
And right off the bat, I found an economist, Julia Pollack at ZipRecruiter, who says it's not unthinkable.
We know from some states and cities in America that very low unemployment rates are possible. In 2024, South Dakota had an unemployment rate of just 1.9%.
But at the national level, it's only ever fallen as low as 2.5% for 2 months in 1953. One reason it hasn't gone lower, says former Fed economist Claudia Sahm, is that certain demographic groups face barriers to full employment, including lack of education and training and discrimination. Black unemployment has historically been about twice as high as white unemployment. In South Dakota, unemployment on some Native American reservations is 80% or higher.
There's mismatches of the skills that workers have and the geographies where they are, and that is the limit on the national unemployment rate. These pockets of structurally much higher unemployment.
There's another kind of unemployment that keeps the rate well above 1.5%, says Betsy Stevenson at the University of Michigan.
Something that economists call frictional unemployment. The flies in the ointment that prevent workers and jobs from finding each other right away.
It's the unavoidable churn in good times and bad as workers leave one job to find another or graduate school and start looking. And we actually want some frictional unemployment. It's a sign of a healthy labor market, says economist Michael Strain at the American Enterprise Institute.
Being unemployed for a few weeks and finding the best match you can, you're more productive. You're contributing more to the firm, to the economy, means that you're earning a higher wage.
Now, we might develop better technology to match workers and employers faster, which could reduce frictional unemployment a bit. And that would be a good thing, says Heidi Shierholz at the Economic Policy Institute.
When unemployment is low, that's great for workers and the economy. But it actually can get too low.
Economists pretty much agree anything lower than 2.5% to 3% risks extreme labor shortages developing in the economy.
Firms who have job openings are just basically poaching workers from other companies because there's hardly any unemployed people to hire. That requires big wage increases. And then that translates into big price increases.
In other words, inflation. The Fed would raise interest rates to fight it, driving unemployment back up again. And it's not only a hot labor market that can lead to super low unemployment, says Betsy Stevenson.
A low unemployment rate could be associated with a very stagnant labor market where there are no jobs, so there's no point looking.
This is her tech-driven nightmare scenario, where AI and robots are able to do the work of most humans cheaper than we can do it ourselves.
Human wages are pushed so low that maybe people don't even want to work. Maybe they can't even survive while working.
So, bottom line, unemployment could fall lower than it has in the last 70 years, maybe as low as 1.5%. But if it ever does, we should be very worried that something's seriously wrong with the U.S. economy. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
We all know by now that streaming is a business model. For the big, highly produced content streamers, Netflix and all the rest, sure, but also for the content creator streamers too. YouTube, of course, but also for companies like Twitch. And the reality is, as Twitch demonstrates, that content creator business model is hard. There have been rounds of layoffs at that company, and as of yet, no profit for parent company Amazon. And for the millions of people who stream on it and either are or aspire to make a living from said streaming, well, that's not easy either. Nathan Grayson's new book about the company is called Stream Big, The Triumphs and Turmoils of Twitch and the Stars Behind the Screen. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me on.
For those unfamiliar, what is Twitch, if you can sort of encapsulate it for me?
So Twitch is a live streaming platform that originally was kind of dedicated to video games, to, people playing video games for audiences to watch, but has since expanded in all sorts of different directions. So people will, broadcast themselves out and about, in their hometowns or while traveling, doing things of that nature. Some people broadcast like talking about politics and news. It's really for pretty much everything at this point.
Well, the interesting thing about Twitch to me now, and this you get to this later in the book, and it's a totally fascinating story. But what has happened is that a lot of Twitch stars, that top layer, if you will, they're now on multiple platforms, and Twitch has sort of given up on exclusivity, and it's these stars realize they have to be on multiple platforms, and Twitch has recognized it, and it becomes sort of a business model challenge for them now.
Well, and a lot of that is a result of just how the social media ecosystem has evolved in general. A lot of people on, say, TikTok are also on YouTube, are also on Instagram. Kind of everybody now doesn't put all their eggs in one basket because they've learned if you do that, there's always a chance that platform could shift or change massively, or they could switch up their algorithm or something like that. And then suddenly things that you made that used to perform well no longer find an audience.
I probably should have started with this, but if you were going to describe the content creation ecosystem to somebody who's reasonably online, but is not on Twitch, doesn't follow many of those sort of streaming platforms, it's huge, and yet it's not like in the American business mainstream conversation,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's see. How would I describe it? In terms of appeal, a lot of people follow their favorite content creators in part because these people feel relatable to them. Mm-hmm. And they're like, yeah, this person, they do feel kind of like a friend. But then you kind of expand that out into the larger ecosystem, and it becomes almost like reality TV. Mm-hmm. Like there are all these little people with all these little dramas that you're keeping up with constantly. And then within all of that, everybody is kind of a small business owner, right?
Right.
Where they are effectively, well, not effectively, literally they are contractors under the various major platforms that pay them out, often via ad money and things of that nature. Right. They're all performing what is a job, but it's also a form of entertainment.
Right.
Yeah.
No, look, that's really good. And as you were offering that description, an example occurred to me, and it's about the consumers of the content. We say on this program all the time, the American consumer is fickle. My wife and the one child who's still living at home with us, were introduced by our oldest son to this guy on YouTube who treks through the Alaskan wilderness, used to be like a traffic attorney in Virginia, and now he just goes out and does stuff like makes snow forts and teaches you how to survive in the Alaskan wilderness. And we watched it pretty steadily for 2 weeks, and then we just kind of clicked off. And I imagine that's what consumers of Twitch and all the other platforms do, right? They're like, oh yeah, this is interesting, but then I'm going to go look at this thing over here, and then I'm going to look at this thing over here. And that becomes a business challenge for those content creators.
And it's kind of like the sort of Damocles always hanging over their heads. Right. Is like, if I'm not consistent enough, because that's the big thing on Twitch. It's just being there every day, streaming during the same time segment. There's always the thought of, if I stop or if I take a sustained break, then everyone will leave. They'll find somebody else to either follow or watch, or crucially, give their money to. Because, if you're not around for like a week, a lot of viewers are going to say, okay, well, then why am I paying this person $5 per month?
Right. Something you said a minute ago resonates here. This is a job for these people, and that's how they make their living, and that's why they keep grinding it out, even though it can be really, you've got examples in this book of people having health problems and all kinds of stuff, but they get up and they do this because it's their job.
Well, yeah, exactly. But in this case, it's a different kind of job. For one, you are in front of an audience. You are this version of your personality that is dialed up to 11, and that takes a lot of energy. But a lot of these streamers are doing it for 8 to 10 hours per day, or in some cases even more than that. In addition to that, being a streamer or a content creator also means maintaining all sorts of relationships with various people, with various brands and whatnot that you're doing deals with. It is one of those jobs that, if you let it, and it's very easy to let it because the incentive structures are there, it can become all consuming. Some streamers, I remember a couple of years ago, XQC, who's one of the bigger streamers on Twitch and now Kick, talked about buying a car and then was like, yeah, but I never use it because I don't have time. I'm always just streaming.
Wow. I was going to ask you, just as the ender, I was going to ask you, what happens to Twitch in 5 or 10 years? And well, see, that's kind of an unknowable thing, right? Because this whole ecosystem is changing so fast, no?
I mean, it's really hard to say what happens to Twitch in 5 or 10 years. Because, for example, 5 years ago, there was a really unprecedented moment for Twitch, which was the pandemic. And in 2020 and 2021, that was kind of like the Twitch boom. But all that is to say that it's not just the content creation ecosystem that is unpredictable, it's also the world. If, God forbid, there's another pandemic, I think we're going to see a lot more people on Twitch again. Short of that, it's hard to say, because Amazon wants Twitch to be profitable so much, and because they've, in the past couple of years, laid off over 1,000 people from a company that was only like a little bit over 2,000. That seems to suggest that the priority is just, we need to make money. And, if that means that this product suffers or loses relevance, well, that's tough.
So be it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nathan Grayson, his book is called Stream Big, The Triumphs and Turmoils of Twitch and the Stars Behind the Screen. Nathan, thanks a lot. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Coming up.
That is the vehicle that connect them with the outside world.
Sometimes the key to independence is a set of keys. First, though, let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's up 10 points today, basically unchanged, 44,556 on the blue chips. NASDAQ up 14 points, about a 10% there, 20,041. S&P 500, 14 points to the go to 0.25%. 61 and 29. The National Association of Home Builders says home builder confidence is at a 5-month low. Some of that, of course, uncertainty over the future pricing of imported materials. Where did we start the program today? Tariffs, isn't that right? Yes. West Fraser Timber Company grew 0.8%. UFP Industries down 1.6% today. Ford Motor Company, Reuters reports, is withholding stock bonuses from about half its middle managers in an effort to cut costs. Ford accelerated 1.2%. Bonds down, yield on the 10-year T-note rose 4.55%, the double nickel. You're listening to Marketplace.
The Numbers is supported by Odoo.com, your entire business on one platform. Marketplace is supported by Amazon Business, aiming to help save time by offering smart business buying solutions so there's more time to focus on growing the business and less time doing the admin. More at AmazonBusiness.com. And by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to raising awareness and accelerating action on America's fiscal challenges to build a brighter economic future for the next generation. Learn more at pgpf.org.
WNYC receives support from Redwood, now on Broadway. Idina Menzel stars as a woman who uproots her life after her world spins out of control and is transported to a new environment that will change her life forever. Tickets at redwoodmusical.com.
On the next All of It, some news from the world of the stage. As off-Broadway workers seek to unionize, and as the Trump administration cuts federal funding for the arts, what does it all mean for live theater in New York? New York Times theater reporter Michael Paulson shares the latest. We'll also talk with artist Allison Janae Hamilton about how her practice explores the rural South. I'm Allison Stewart. Join us for all of it, weekdays at noon on WNYC.
You're listening to Marketplace on WNYC. Coming up in the 7 o'clock hour of All Things Considered, with the first high-level U.S.-Russia talks since the invasion of Ukraine, both sides agree to lay the groundwork for future cooperation. Well, that and much more at 7. Stay tuned.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Ryssdal. Samsung, purveyor of, among other things, TVs and smartphones and laptops, revealed this morning it has bought back and is going to cancel more than $2 billion worth of its shares of stock. Going to make them just disappear. The upside of canceling shares is that the shares that are still trading are worth more. The definitely not upside of canceling shares is that it can be a bit of a tell of tough corporate times. Not for nothing, Samsung shares off 35% over the past year. Marketplace's Kelly Wells takes it from there.
Usually when companies buy back their own shares, they hang on to what they buy so they can give them to employees or resell them later when they need a little money. Connell Fullenkamp, an economics professor at Duke University, says canceling bought back shares is a bold statement.
Traditionally, this has been a way for companies to try to signal to the markets, hey, we think our shares are undervalued.
And canceling shares kind of solves that problem, says Ari Schwader, who teaches economics at the University of Michigan's Business School.
The overall value of Samsung is still what it was, but the number of shares that exist in the world is less. And so the value per share will go up if the number of shares goes down.
And investors have a reason to prefer share cancellations to, say, offering a dividend, says Paul Shea, who teaches economics at Bates College.
You don't pay a dividend tax rate on it, you pay a capital gains tax rate, which is lower for most people.
But Shea says the billions of dollars that Samsung spent to buy the shares it's canceling is billions it did not spend on acquiring other companies or building new plants.
So that could be a negative signal, but it could also just be that this is not a time where there's great opportunity for expansion.
Shea says the cancellations would make him more nervous for a younger company that's never turned a profit. With an older, more stable company like Samsung, he says there's nothing wrong with returning money to shareholders this way. I'm Kaylee Wells for Marketplace.
The Trump White House has, among its other immigration-related policies, stopped the U.S. refugee resettlement program and frozen funding for refugee processing and services. The caveat here, of course, is that by the time you hear this, the courts might have intervened on one side or the other. But the disruption of the refugee ecosystem that's happened just so far has already started to hit the organizations that provide those services. Layoffs have started in cities like Baltimore and Phoenix and Houston, a hub for refugee resettlement. Houston is also where Marketplace's Elizabeth Trovall spent some time with the program teaching a critical skill for anybody living and working there.
In Afghanistan, women are not supposed to drive, especially under the Taliban. But Shakila Hotak isn't in Kabul anymore. This is Houston. We sit in her red Toyota. She turns on one of her favorite songs she plays on her way to work.
This is your driving song?
Yeah. Hotak came to the U.S. as a refugee 2 years ago. She supports herself through her factory job that pays $11 an hour. Through a Dari interpreter on speakerphone, she says before getting her driver's license and car,
I was taking bus and I was taking two bus.
Her commute by bus was roughly 2 hours each direction. Now it's around 35 minutes, and she has the freedom and time to do other things.
I'm leaving my home and I'm going to work, and also I go to hospital and I'm drinking a cup of coffee, or like I drink tea, so I go to chat with my friends.
Getting a driver's license is a must for refugees and immigrants. That's why YMCA International Services in Houston has helped these drivers learn the rules of the road for free. And in their native language.
Buenos dias, todos. How are you doing?
In a recent class, Innocent Tuyirin Jire leads orientation for the driver's ed program.
We are going to learn how to the process of obtaining driver's license.
This class was just a few weeks ago. The program started in 2021, and it's helped around 550 people.
First question is, why do you feel like you need driver's license?
The response is, it's necessary, especially for work, which is why Tuyirin Jire is here to teach them about things like insurance and car seats for kids. Joanne Pantaleon supervised the program and says her clients were hired for new jobs and kept their jobs after getting their license through this program, which was especially popular among women.
You empower women by allowing them to get out of the home and doing things for themselves and not depending on their husband to do day-to-day activities.
In particular, she says she's happy so many Afghan women signed up.
Culturally, the women from the Afghan community stay at home. The fact that 100 Afghan women came to us, learned how to drive, tells me that they're on the path to integration.
At Farnaz Azimi's house in West Houston, we sit cross-legged in her living room on a red carpet. Cartoons are playing for her youngest. Her son Hafiz interprets Dari for us.
He said that she's at home in all 3 years that she's in here.
Azimi's life has largely revolved around the home while her husband works and kids go to school. She got her driver's license
To run everything by herself.
to buy groceries, go to the gym, and maybe one day get a job. She's one step closer with her new Texas driver's license. She goes to her purse to show it to me and smiles.
How did you feel when you got the driver's license?
چیه رقم اگه احساس داشتی وقتی که driver license تا گرفتی؟ She was so happy.
Azimi already has her license, but there won't be new students anytime soon. YMCA just suspended the program and furloughed employees because of the pause on refugee resettlement. YMCA wouldn't comment further, so I talked with Zenobia Lai, who heads the Houston Immigration Legal Services Collaborative. She says resettlement programs and classes don't just give people the chance to flee violence.
That is the vehicle that connect them with the outside world to independence. The refugee resettlement program is actually a beacon of hope about America, what America is. We are losing a lot by cutting the program.
Without a change in policy, it's likely that program cuts and layoffs will continue. In Houston, I'm Elizabeth Troval for Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Viking, dedicated to bringing travelers to the heart of each destination with small ship, river, ocean, and expedition voyages, offering cultural enrichment and immersive experiences. Discover more at Viking.com. And by Pure Storage. In a world of fragmented systems, Pure Storage delivers a single, consistent as-a-service platform for all data storage needs across on-premises, cloud, and hosted environments. More at purestorage.com.
This final note on the way out today, which comes with the hope that you got your chocolate fix on Valentine's Day. Both Mondelez and Hershey's said today at a conference in New York that high and rising cocoa prices mean consumers are going to be paying more to satisfy their sweet tooth. Here's the quote from the Mondelez CEO. Consumers will need to get used to chocolate that is 30, 40, 50% more expensive than it used to be. Our digital and on-demand team includes Carrie Barber, Jordan Manji, Dylan Mietinen, Janet Nguyen, Olga Oxman, Ellen Rolfes, Virginia K. Smith, and Tony Wagner. Francesca Levy is the Executive Director of Digital and On Demand. And I'm Kai Risdal. We will see you tomorrow, everybody. This is APM.
WNYC supporters include